People think betrayal breaks you. But for me, it sharpened something dangerous inside. When I walked away from that house for the last time, I wasn't Catherine anymore, I was Consequence. I'm Catherine, I'm 30 years old, and the story I'm about to tell you isn't just about heartbreak, it's about betrayal so deep it carved my entire world in half. It started with a secret, delivered to my doorstep in the smallest, quietest package imaginable. But before I unravel that nightmarish moment, let me rewind. Let me show you the life I thought I had, because only then will you understand how brutally it all fell apart. On paper, my life was everything I'd ever dreamed of. I had worked hard to become a financial analyst, a career built on discipline and sharp instincts. I owned a modest but comfortable home in the suburbs, the kind of place where neighbors wave at each other as they mow their lawns. And then there was Ethan. My Ethan. Ethan was magnetic. The kind of man who could walk into a crowded room and instantly command attention, not because he was loud, but because his laugh carried, his smile lingered, and he made you feel like you were the only person in the world worth listening to. We had been together for 6 years. We met at a friend's barbecue, talking until the fire pit was just embers. I fell for him fast, and I never looked back. Our future looked scripted in the most perfect way, a wedding, a golden retriever, 2 kids, and one day, the two of us swaying on a porch swing as old age crept in. I didn't just want that dream, I ached for it. But every bright picture has its shadows. Mine was my younger sister, Jessica. If I was the steady, reliable one, the planner, the rock, Jessica was pure fire. Beautiful, confident, impossible to ignore. My parents adored her. To them, she was dazzling, the golden child. My quiet strength? It barely registered. She was the one who got castles without lifting a finger while I spent years laying bricks just to build a home. The wedding preparations were chaos in motion, cake tastings, floral debates, endless guest list squabbles. Ethan's best man, Marcus, was buzzing at the center of it all. Loud, cocky, reckless, Marcus thrived on drama. He had promised Ethan a bachelor party he'd never forget, and the way he smirked at my sister during a family dinner should have set alarm bells ringing. "Don't worry, Jess," he'd winked, "I'll make sure your big sister's man goes out with a bang." Everyone laughed. Everyone but me. Something in the way he said it felt off. But love makes you blind, doesn't it? I shrugged it off. The night of the bachelor party, I stayed home, relishing the silence. The next day, I came home early from work and noticed a small box waiting on my porch. Plain brown wrapping. My name, just Catherine, written neatly on the front. No handwriting I recognized. A simple gift tag was taped to the top, "From your friends at work. Congrats." Strange. My coworkers had already given me a gift. Why would they send another? My stomach twisted, but I told myself not to be paranoid. Inside my kitchen, I set the box on the counter, went through my usual routine, sorted the mail, poured a glass of water, but I kept glancing at it. It felt heavy. Not in weight, but in presence. Finally, I slit the tape open. Nestled in black tissue paper was a single flash drive. Taped to it, a folded note with just 4 words printed in stark block letters. "Thought you should see this." My hands went cold. My chest tightened. This wasn't a gift. This was a time bomb. I carried it to my home office like I was holding a grenade. I sat down, slipped it into my laptop, and a lone video file appeared on the screen, just random letters and numbers. My cursor hovered over it. For a full minute, I debated walking away. Throwing it out. Pretending it didn't exist. Ignorance is bliss, right? But the other part of me, the analyst, the one who can't ignore data, needed to know. I double-clicked. The screen lit up with a shaky phone recording. A crowded bar, music thundering. Marcus's distinct laugh echoed behind the camera. And then, I saw them. Ethan. My fiancé. My partner of 6 years. His face flushed, his hair messy, smiling like he didn't have a care in the world. And beside him, Jessica. My sister. Her arm draped around his waist like she'd been there all along. They were laughing, pressed against each other, shouting over the music. And then she kissed him. Not a drunken mistake. Not a playful peck. A kiss that screamed hunger and possession. And Ethan kissed her back. The camera zoomed in, capturing every awful detail. And it didn't stop there. The video went on, searing images into my mind that I'll never be able to scrub away. I sat frozen, staring at the screen while the world around me dissolved. My ears rang so loud I couldn't even hear the bar noise anymore. My pulse thundered. I didn't scream. I didn't smash the laptop. I just sat there, as the Catherine I had been, happy, trusting, ready to be a wife, bled out silently in that office chair. Grief ripped through me like claws. Rage ignited like fire. And then, nothing. Silence. A terrifying, crystal clear calm. I ejected the flash drive and held it in my palm. It was warm, almost pulsing, like a fragment of plutonium, small, but catastrophic. I slid it into an encrypted folder on my laptop. I named it simply, Consequence. Because in that moment, I knew. They had built their perfect little world on my trust, my love, my silence. They thought they could use me as a backdrop to their reckless games. But recess was over. And I was about to teach them exactly what it means to face consequences. You need to know the slow-burning history that made me into the woman who could act with such cold precision. This wasn't just about one night of betrayal. It was the last straw in a lifetime of being background scenery in everyone else's life. If you don't understand the steady accumulation of every small slight, every quiet theft of credit and affection, then my next moves will look cruel. They weren't. They were inevitable. When I was 10, I begged for a quality telescope. I read every kid's astronomy book in the library, drew little star maps on scrap paper, and dreamed of finally seeing Saturn's rings with my own eyes. I dropped hints for weeks, casual comments, excited little essays on the kitchen table, until my parents nodded and smiled like they were hearing me for the first time. On my birthday morning, I tore open the wrapping with the kind of hope only a child understands. It was a telescope, all right. Cheap plastic, flimsy tripod, stickers on the box. I forced a smile, hugged my parents, muttered a polite thanks, and hid the disappointment somewhere behind my teeth. A month later, it was Jessica's birthday. She was 2 years younger, but everyone treated her like she owned an older sister's head start. She decided she wanted to be a rock star for a week, banging on a tennis racket in the living room as a rehearsal, and suddenly our house vibrated with the thunder of a brand new electric guitar and an amplifier that made the windows tremble. It cost 3 times what my telescope had. My father clapped, proud as a peacock, while my mother cooed about nurturing talent. I sat upstairs with my plastic lens and watched the muffled chaos through the slats of the blinds. That was my first lesson. My quiet dreams were hobbies, Jessica's whims were investments. I learned to tuck my wants away and be grateful for what I got, because gratitude kept the peace. The pattern followed us into adulthood. I graduated college having worked my way through late shifts waiting tables so I could graduate with honors and minimize loans. My parents took me to a small chain restaurant and offered a lukewarm, "We're proud of you," then hurried the conversation toward Jessica's upcoming graduation party next weekend. When Jessica's big day arrived, she got fireworks, private room, the city's best restaurant, a shiny red convertible with a bow on the hood parked out front. My father announced to the entire room that she was a dealmaker, born to win. I clutched a glass of flat champagne and felt invisible, like a ghost at my own celebration. Work didn't offer an escape. Years in, I found a niche in sustainable energy futures, something bold and ahead of the curve, and built a full investment strategy around it. Proud, I shared the idea with my father at a barbecue, naive enough to trust family with my work. The next weekend, at Sunday dinner, my father announced with loud chest-thumping enthusiasm that Jessica was launching a brilliant new investment project. I watched Jessica fumble through the concept, mangling terms and missing details, but my parents adored it. They applauded. Ethan squeezed my hand and said, "Isn't it incredible how ambitious your family is?" as if he were praising both of us, folding my work into the family myth where Jessica was always the star and I was some quiet researcher behind the curtain. Only my friend Sarah saw it for what it was. The two of us sat in her tiny apartment that night. I felt sick with humiliation. "Stop giving them your gold," she said, blunt and angry. "They melt it down and make another trophy for her shelf." I wanted to stop. But how do you stop being the daughter who keeps the house from burning down? Granddad helped me see another path. He was a carpenter with a soft voice and hands like weathered tools. When he was dying and the room was full of words that meant nothing, he asked my parents and Jessica to step out and took my hand. "Your father sees flash, not grain," he told me in a hospital whisper. "You see grain. Don't let them make you small." That was carved into me. When he died, his last instruction, "Look after yourself first," sat like an ember I couldn't let die. So when the flash drive looped in my head in that motel, the images and the betrayal combined with 30 years of invisible labor, small silences, and appropriation. It wasn't just the kiss. It was a lifetime of being taken for granted, of having my work and my heart repurposed for someone else's glory. Somewhere under the hurt was an odd lightness. The burden of being the dutiful daughter felt a fraction lighter, replaced with the possibility of choosing myself at last. I called Sarah. "It's over," I said. "All of it." "Where are you?" she asked, steady. "Driving." I couldn't tell her where I'd end up. I powered down my phone, snapped the SIM card clean in half. The tiny satisfying crunch felt like a promise. The first 24 hours were surgical. I rented a generic motel room, paid cash, and bought a burner phone and a cheap laptop. I didn't sleep. I brewed coffee that tasted like determination and fed the machine of my anger into planning. The wedding was the symbol of everything, public, shiny, irreversible. If I was going to take a stand, it had to come by dismantling the thing they all worshipped. I opened the cloud folder that held our wedding spreadsheets. It was almost too easy. Venue coordinator Brenda picked up cheerfully. "This is Catherine Patterson." My voice was even, clinical. "We need to cancel the wedding." There was confusion, a polite apology, and my practiced lie, unforeseen circumstances, processing fees, transfer to a new account. I gave her routing details into an account I'd opened that morning, untraceable, temporary. One call became a chain. Photographer, florist, caterer, band. The bakery call gave me a personal thrill. "Cancel the Eternal Love cake," the baker gasped, affronted. "That's right," I said. "Eternal Love's off the menu." Each call felt like amputation and liberation simultaneously. Removing them from the narrative we'd built felt poisonous and freeing. As the dominoes fell, my burner lit up. Sarah texted, "Category 5 meltdown." Ethan called 5 times. Jessica left voicemails. "Your parents are telling people you had a nervous breakdown." I laughed then, a harsh, small sound. Reframing my deliberate departure as nervous breakdown was exactly their MO, convert consequence into weakness so they don't have to face culpability. I composed an email with a simple subject, "This is why I'm gone." To a few trusted mutual friends I attached the video. I didn't write a long speech, the footage spoke. It was a digital match, lit in precise hands. Sarah later sent me screenshots, Marcus's message about Ethan throwing himself at Jessica, and a DM on his phone from Jessica that read, "Hope you had as much fun as I did watching, winky face." Marcus hadn't been a passive documentarian, he'd engineered it. The flash drive wasn't an accident. It was placed for me to find. Someone had wanted the spectacle to be public. That made the next move obvious. I had to expose truth to the people whose values mattered most to Ethan, his parents. The Williams family lived in a different moral economy: honor, privacy, reputation. They saw me as steady, respectable, exactly the kind of partner they'd hope for their son. I crafted a letter and attached the video and a copy of our couple's counseling intake forms to show I'd tried to work on the relationship. I clicked send. The click sounded like a demolition charge. Then I did something else. I went to work. My boss, Mr. Davis, the kind of man who slices through bullshit with an old-school stare, answered my call. He already knew I was out for personal reasons. I pivoted and presented opportunity. This situation has forced me to rethink my financial focus, I told him. When I return, I have ideas for restructuring assets. He was interested. Let's have lunch when you're back. The opening felt delicious. While they watched flames, I was drafting blueprints for my life. But they fought back through the small, stupid things, like a credit inquiry using my social number traced to my hometown. Jessica was trying to hunt me. I left in 3 minutes, heart in my throat, and drove to Sarah's suggestion, the old family cabin in the Berkshires. Primitive, off-grid, a place with pine sap perfumes and creaking floorboards that remembered summers, not scandals. 2 days of silence there calmed me. I felt alive and small in the best way. Then tires on gravel. I grabbed an iron poker by the hearth like somebody in a bad movie, and met Tom at the door, cousin, diplomat, man who knew how to smile his way into other people's trust. He cried sympathy, nodded in all the right places, then told me my parents were devastated and begged me to come home for a family meeting to contain the damage. He painted it as preservation. Bring it back inside, he said. Make them apologize. Present a united front. He thought he was convincing me to bury the truth. He didn't know he was handing me a perfectly wrapped invitation. Fine, I said. Tell Dad I'll come. I want to talk face to face. Relief lit his face. He left like a man who'd won a small, moral victory. Back home the air felt staged, the same portraits, the same grandfather clock, the same floral-scented living room. Only the performances had changed. My father sat like a judge in an armchair, my mother was the distraught matriarch, Ethan the guilty man trying to be small, Jessica pacing like an animal that suddenly realized the fence had been removed. Tom was there, smug peacekeeper. They expected tears, apologies, bargaining. They were met with a woman who'd traded sentiment for contracts. I set a slim black portfolio on the coffee table and watched their faces shift from superior comfort to puzzled worry. My father started first, blame, confusion, public embarrassment. My mother called it a foolish mistake. Ethan stammered his rehearsed lines about drunkenness and regret. I let them flap. Then I opened the portfolio. I'm not here to talk about the video, I said. I'm here to talk about business. Shock is the cleanest emotion. It strips people to their cores. I slid a thick, professionally bound document across the table, the Patterson Family Trust. Their eyes traced the cover like it was a forbidden object. Do you recognize this? I asked. My father's brow nodded. What is this? It's the trust one set up 5 years ago to manage your retirement savings, I said, calm and slow. You left the funds in low-yield accounts. I took them, quietly, and grew them into something that would actually support your retirement. I watched Ethan's face shift from guilt to quick, greedy calculations. I told them the truth. I had been the trustee, the one managing the money. I'd turned a modest seed into a substantial nest egg. The room went quiet, the number we were talking about settling into the air like a physical weight. My mother gasped, Ethan's eyes widened, and my father laughed, short, incredulous. Ask Mr. Davis, I said. The furnace of my plan flickered on. On the flat screen above the fireplace, Mr. Davis appeared, stern, crisp, professional. He confirmed everything I'd said. I wasn't the junior analyst they caricatured. I was his protege. I'd managed funds. I'd produced returns. The color drained from my father's face. My mother's hand slapped over her mouth. I slid one more paper across the table, highlighted and precise. Article 4, Section 2, the Morality Clause. The clause read like a blade. In the event an immediate family member or their betrothed engaged in gross moral turpitude, the trust would be dissolved and the assets reverted to the founder, me. Infidelity, criminal activity, public shame, these were enumerated. The video was proof. The contract was broken. At 9:05 that morning, Mr. Davis told them, the trust had been dissolved and the assets transferred into an account under my sole control. The room tilted. My father's authority evaporated like mist in sunlight. Their future evaporated with it. Ethan lunged like a cornered animal, grabbing my arm and begging. Please, he begged. We can fix this. We can still have our life. I looked at his hand, the same hand that used to make me feel safe. There was no remorse in his eyes, only a panicked grief for the life he'd gambled away. There is no we, Ethan, I said quietly. You made your choice. I let go of his fingers like removing a bandage. Then I turned to Jessica, collapsing on the couch, hands over her face, the gilded child suddenly exposed as empty. You had the world, I told her. I funded it. You traded it for 15 minutes of selfishness. I hope it was worth it. My mother's voice broke into that old, familiar plea, why would you do this? Why destroy your family? She didn't understand that this wasn't destruction, it was accounting. For 30 years I had made deposits, time, talent, love, and received withdrawal receipts of neglect. I didn't destroy this family, I said softly, deliberately, I just balanced the books. That line felt righteous and final. I stood, slow and deliberate. The exit was part of the message. I wanted the last image they had of me to be my back, walking away, unapologetic, unashamed. Where are you going? My father croaked. To my life, I said, hand on the doorknob. The one I built. The click of the heavy oak door closing behind me sounded like a verdict. I walked past the hoops and flower beds, every small domestic artifact a memory, a slight, and slid into my car. I drove away without looking in the rearview. The air tasted clean. The house they'd inhabited felt like a stage set I'd left after setting the final props aflame. They had always believed the dynasty was theirs by right. I had been the silent architect. It felt fitting, somehow, that I would be the one to bring the curtain down. As I drove, the cabin receding in the distance, my phone buzzed with texts I ignored. I had already made the choice to sever, to take custody of the thing they'd treated as disposable. I didn't know what would come next, the lawsuits, the calls, the way the world would turn on me for destroying a family, but I did know one thing with absolute clarity: I would not be complicit any longer. I had taken the first steps. I had detonated their illusions. But the fallout, oh, the fallout, had only just begun. The morning after I walked out of that house, I woke up with the strangest sensation. For the first time in 30 years, I felt light. Not happy, happiness wasn't on the table yet, but unburdened. I hadn't realized how much weight I'd carried, being their quiet backbone, the invisible scaffolding that kept their world from collapsing. And now? The scaffolding was gone. If their house crumbled, that wasn't my tragedy anymore. I sat in a small cafe near the highway, stirring a bitter cup of coffee that tasted like freedom. My burner phone buzzed relentlessly, lighting up with numbers I didn't recognize, probably Ethan, maybe Jessica, maybe even my parents trying new lines to reach me. I didn't answer. Not once. But Sarah did call, and I picked up for her. "They're in full meltdown mode," she said, her voice equal parts exasperation and delight. "Jessica showed up at my place last night screaming that you ruined her life. Your dad's telling anyone who'll listen that you're unstable, your mom is crying about being robbed, and Ethan, oh, Catherine, Ethan is practically camping outside my building." A laugh slipped out of me, sharp and humorless. "He thinks I'll come back." Sarah snorted. "He doesn't miss you. He misses the lifestyle. The cushion. He's like a man who just dropped his winning lottery ticket down a storm drain." I stared out the cafe window at the endless stretch of road. Let him dig. By the second day, the fallout spread. The Williams family, Ethan's parents, finally broke their silence. Sarah forwarded me the text one of the bridesmaids shared in the group chat. "We will not be hosting, attending, or acknowledging any future events regarding Ethan until further notice. Our prayers are with Catherine. We ask for privacy. Simple. Cold. Final." Ethan's golden boy reputation was officially scorched earth. Jessica, meanwhile, went into damage control mode. Posts popped up on her social media claiming the video was fake, doctored, a malicious attack on her character. But then screenshots began circulating, the DM she'd sent Marcus after the bachelor party, bragging about what had happened. The evidence spread like wildfire, and Jessica's attempt at denial only poured gasoline on the flames. For once in her life, her charm didn't work. People weren't buying it. That week, I drove north again, back to the Berkshire's cabin, this time not to hide but to breathe. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, and the silence out there didn't feel oppressive anymore, it felt like sanctuary. I spent hours walking the trails, sketching out plans in a leather notebook I'd bought just for this, my life, version 2.0. The notes were messy at first, career goals, financial strategies, even wild ideas about starting my own firm. But at the top of every page, in bold letters, I wrote the same word, choice. Because for the first time, every move I made would be mine. Not dictated by family guilt. Not stolen by Jessica. Not minimized by Ethan. Mine. Of course, they didn't let go so easily. 3 days after the family meeting, a black SUV pulled up outside the cabin. My pulse spiked. I thought maybe Jessica had tracked me down again. But when the knock came at the door, it wasn't her. It was my father. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. Shoulders slumped, suit wrinkled, eyes bloodshot. He didn't bother with theatrics this time. "Catherine," he rasped, "please. We can fix this. Just, give the money back." I didn't open the screen door. I stood behind it, arms crossed, the iron poker still leaning against the wall from last time. "It was never yours to begin with," I said evenly. His face hardened, the old anger flashing through. "You think you've won? You think anyone will stand by you after this? You'll end up alone. That's what happens to people who burn bridges." I tilted my head, studying him. "Maybe. But at least I'll be free. Alone is better than invisible." His jaw worked, but no words came. Finally, he turned, climbed into the SUV, and drove off. I watched the taillights vanish between the trees and realized something profound. His threats didn't land anymore. For once, I wasn't afraid of being alone. But Ethan was a different story. Because Ethan didn't show up at the cabin. He didn't beg through voicemails. He went quiet. Too quiet. And that, more than anything, terrified me. Because silence, I'd learned, wasn't peace. It was plotting. And if Ethan was plotting, then the real war hadn't even started yet, the silence didn't last. 3 days after my father's visit, I got my first taste of Ethan's new strategy. Not the begging voicemails. Not the tearful texts. No, he'd shifted tactics. He was playing a longer game. It started with Sarah's call. Her voice was tense, not her usual sharp-edged humor. "Cat, Ethan's lawyering up." I froze in the middle of the cabin kitchen, my mug halfway to my lips. "Lawyering up for what?" "He's claiming you mismanaged his contributions to the wedding fund. He says you diverted money without his consent." A bitter laugh clawed out of my throat. "You mean the money I just handed back to vendors when I canceled everything?" "Yeah. That money. He's twisting it. He's painting you as, get this, financially abusive." I slammed the mug down so hard coffee sloshed onto the counter. Abusive. The word felt like a knife. Ethan, the man who had drunk himself into a betrayal with my sister, was now rewriting the story so I was the villain. The next blow came faster. Sarah sent me screenshots of Jessica's social media. A photo of her, eyes swollen like she'd been crying, captioned, "Some wounds never heal. Some sisters never forgive. Please stop sending me threats. I didn't deserve this." Thousands of comments flooded in. Half pitying her. Half ripping her apart. It didn't matter which side people took, the narrative was shifting. Jessica wasn't the golden girl anymore, but she wasn't the villain either. She was angling for victimhood. And Ethan? He leaned into that narrative. Whispering about me being unstable, cold, calculated. To some people, it sounded believable. After all, hadn't I vanished? Cancelled everything overnight? Sent out a damning video without a word? That night, I sat by the cabin fire, staring into the flames until my eyes watered. I could almost hear my grandfather's voice in the crackle. Don't let them make you small. Don't let them rewrite your worth. My jaw tightened. If Ethan wanted to play chess, fine. I'd play chess. But I was done being defensive. The next morning, I drove into town, bought a fresh burner laptop, and checked the encrypted folder labeled consequence. Inside were the files I'd started compiling, bank transfers, screenshots, trust documents, Marcus's damning DM proof. Not just of infidelity, but of manipulation, lies, exploitation. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to end the Patterson-Williams myth once and for all. The opportunity came faster than I expected. Ethan reached out, not to me, but to Mr. Davis, my boss. The man who had vouched for me in front of my family. Ethan tried to spin a story about me being reckless, vindictive, financially untrustworthy. But Davis wasn't a fool. He called me directly. "Catherine," he said in that clipped, no-nonsense tone, "your ex is trying to smear you. I don't entertain gossip, but I thought you should know." I felt my stomach tighten. "And what did you tell him?" "That I trust numbers, not rumors. And your numbers speak for themselves." Relief flooded me. But then he added, "Still, you might want to consider taking preemptive action. When men like him lose money, they don't stop swinging." That night, I made my choice. If Ethan wanted war, I'd give him war. But not with shouting matches or sobbing voicemails. With documentation. With precision. With the kind of cold clarity that had become my weapon. I opened a new folder on my laptop. Labeled it Judgment. And as the flames from the cabin fireplace flickered across my face, I whispered to myself, "Ethan wants to fight? Then he's about to learn." I snapped the laptop shut. "I don't lose.